The next option I want to talk to you about in your site, the next setting, is plugins. And we'll be getting into this in the next module, of course, but just as a quick overview, this is where you can install plugins. These plugins come with it by default, but you can install new plugins, you can activate them here, you can edit the options of them, and so forth. And then, of course, it also has an editor that lets you edit the content, the actual code of a plugin itself. So if you want to tweak the way a plugin works and you have that advanced knowledge, you can go in and do that. And then next is users, and here's where you control users. So of course I'm the administrator, so I'm listed here just as the only user. I haven't set up any other users, but you can actually set up users. You can edit the users and their names and their tell them that they have to have a new password. You can set their permission level. So for example, I'm an administrator, so I might want to set up a user who's a subscriber, and I can create that role or create that user and then add that role of subscriber to them. Or I might want to add a user who goes in and just edits content on my site. So let's say you get your site all up and running and everything's smooth and good, the content's the way you want it, but you want to be able to add new posts or add new content on an ongoing basis. And you want to hire someone, or maybe a friend or family is going to be helping you out editing or adding content. So what you would want to do is, rather than give them your account to log in, you would create a new account and grant them access to, at the whatever level you need them to have, however much power you need them to have to be able to go in and accomplish the tasks that you want them to do on your website. So it's a really cool way to use to set up a website that then you can have other users who have access to make changes or do things that you want them to have, employees or, like I said, family or friends or people who are helping you, without giving them administrator access to accidentally, where they could accidentally screw up the site. Next, we'll talk about tools real quick. This is something I don't use very often at all, but you have the ability to import or export tools within WordPress. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is go down to settings, and we're going to talk about all the different settings that are available to your WordPress site. So if you remember in the last video, when we were doing the install, we set up our site title as Repurposed Chattanooga. So again, you can go back into general settings and change that here if you want to change it later. And then the tagline is part of the site title, and it shows up in this bar up here when the site is live. And so I'm going to actually take that out so that doesn't show up as any part of my site title. And then I'm just going to control what's seen and what's in my site title from here. However, there are some themes that utilize the tagline as kind of a subtitle. So if I went out here, for example, I see Repurposed Chattanooga, I might see whatever the tagline is below it if it was a different theme. So it's something to consider, and that you can set if you want to have kind of a subtitle to your site. And then these URLs here, we don't want to mess with those. Those pretty much just stay as they are. That shows where our site lives, and if we change it, it could actually break the WordPress install. And then everything else here is pretty self-explanatory. Your email address where you get notifications. This membership checkbox is always unchecked by default, which means people could register on your site as a subscriber and be able to comment if it was checked. So keeping it unchecked just keeps your site secure, and then we'll talk about that later and what you can do here to allow people to comment and how to control that. So once I'm done, I've removed the tagline. I'm just going to hit save changes. You always have to click that at the bottom whenever you make changes to any of these settings screens. The next settings is the writing settings, and it's basically deals with primarily what I work with anyway in this page is the post category. That's going to be my default post category, and we'll talk about all that later and how that. But everything else here I don't really ever change or worry about. I don't use, so nothing too complicated that you have to be concerned with there. Reading settings are the settings of how your site will read, basically. So for example, the front page is going to display your latest posts, and you can see that happening here. Hello World is the latest and only post that's on that site as a sample, and so that's what comes up when somebody goes to that site. And then you can actually change that to a page. So I could say I want to change that to a static page. So let's go to sample page, for example, and I always leave these settings as is. You don't really need to worry about these two, the blog pages show at most, or the syndication feed, or any of this. And then of course in the install video we made sure that our site would be visible, and that's the same setting here. If I check this, it makes my site less visible to the internet, so I don't want to mess with that, and I'm just going to hit save changes for changing the static page. And now you'll see if I refresh the website, it's not going to show hello world, it's going to show sample page. The next setting is discussion, and this is where we control comments and how comments are moderated, who can comment, and all sorts of complicated and interesting things regarding comments to posts. And something that you're really not going to use unless you want people to be able to comment on posts that you put up. So if you're doing your site as a blog, or you have a blog option on your site where you're adding blog posts and you want people to have the power to comment, this is where you would control how that works, how that flow happens, and who can comment, and who should be moderated, and so forth. So we'll talk about all that in the next video, or in the next module. The next setting is media settings, and this is where you control if you're going to upload a media like a picture or a video, but this is primarily about images actually. But say I'm going to go upload an image, and I want to be able to quickly put that image into a post and just tell it when I'm putting it in, make it a medium size image. This is where you control what that means, how big that image will be. So you can actually adjust these numbers to make your medium and your large sizes different, or your thumbnails different sizes. And then uploading files is just any kind of media file, whether it be an image or a video. This tells it to organize it by month and year folders, which is really useful, and I recommend keeping that checked. So nothing to save here, I didn't change anything. And then the last setting that I'm going to talk about is permalinks. And permalinks are really how your site appears to a visitor or to a search engine such as Google or Yahoo on the internet. So for example, if I go in here and I go to this post, Hello World, it comes up as my website / p=1. So that's not really a friendly way to show that post. And if I wanted to tell someone to go to this post, I wouldn't be able to say, I may not be able to remember it. It may be post p= and some other random number. So it would be hard to keep track of those numbers, and then it's not a very friendly way to index them in Google and so forth. So we want to keep our links nice and clean. And so what we're going to be doing, what I'm going to teach you to do, is use post name. There's other ways of doing it. You can use date formats or numeric format. And of course, then the other option is to use custom structure. But we're not going to talk about that. This is just a beginner's guide. So we're going to go into post name. And so as they're saying here, it'll be your website / sample-post. And remember, we talked about slugs earlier, the kind of slugs of WordPress, not the slimy slugs. And a slug is also something that a post can have. So when you create a post and you create the title of that post, for example, Hello World, WordPress will automatically create a slug of that with Hello-World. So now that I've changed that, I'm going to show you an example. I've changed it to post name, and I'm going to hit Save Changes, and then I'm going to refresh this post, and it actually changed it to Hello-World instead of p=1. So that's a little easier and more user-friendly. So that's it for this video, going through the settings. I hope that that you were able to get kind of a broad view of what settings are available, what each of the options and menu items control. Of course, this was just an overview, so don't panic if you feel like you don't have a clear enough understanding of anything in particular, because in the next module we're going to go through and actually configure the site and use the settings that we need to be using, and I'm going to explain things in a lot more detail. So head over to module 4, and I'll see you there.